Hey guys, welcome to the Good Edit Unfiltered with Elle and Kat. We are so very excited to bring to you a very ambitious and courageous conversation today that really dives deep into the intersection between race and reality TV. Now, here's the thing. We all know that whenever race enters the conversation, the atmosphere shifts, defenses go up, and the ability to really receive and to think objectively about what's being discussed against the context of race kind of goes out the window. And what we want you to do is just to pause and to sit with that just for a minute and to really challenge yourself to lower the defense and to be vulnerable to thinking objectively and receive the discussion, which is based on lived experiences as authentically as we're bringing it to you. And these are based on lived experiences of some of our favorite Bravo celebrities that we watch every week. And the fact is that if reality TV is really intended to reflect real life, then it only makes sense that real life dynamics, such as the feminist mystique, such as marital conflict, parenthood, and in this case, race, will surface, and it deserves a conversation. So before we get started, Kat and I want to introduce to you our very prestigious guest. We have Dr. Wendy Talley, LCSW, and Kimberly Bryant of This is Kimberly A. Bryant. And I'm going to pass the mic to Dr. Wendy Talley. Tell us who you are.
Absolutely. Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to be in the room with some amazing individuals about a great topic, an important topic as such. So my name is Dr. Wendy Talley. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and doctorate of social work as well. And I work with entertainers, executive leaders, things of that nature, balancing work and professional life so they can be able to master that. I am so proud to say since 2019, I have been working with Sony Pictures Entertainment. I'm the therapist for the West Coast. However, I've worked with executives and entertainers from the West Coast all the way to Asia and also to Europe as well. And so this has been a great and a little plug. I also used to be an actress with Sony Pictures Entertainment and did reality TV. So it's just kind of full circle to really be able to bring my technique and my skill sets back to my home. So thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. And Kimberly?
Hello, I'm Kimberly. Thank you so much for having me here. Again, I'm so excited to be here. I have a background in broadcast journalism. I received a bachelor's degree from Southeastern Louisiana University. So y'all might hear a little twang. I don't hear it personally, but I get told I have that. And so I went from being a sports journalist to dipping into the entertainment world, kind of following my family's footsteps because a lot of my family on my dad's side are the entertainment industry and entertainers also. I've been seen on TMZ as well, and I would like to call myself a pop culture expert and enthusiast.
Well, you are an enthusiast and you have been killing the Instagram game for sure. So, Kat, you and I have been talking about the dynamics that we've been seeing on Summer House. I think we've dove into Beverly Hills a little bit, and we've definitely dove into Southern Charm. And I think you and I both agree that it's time. It's time to talk about
Yes,
race, right? Tell me what you're feeling right now.
finally.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that Kat and I discussed the other day, and I just couldn't contain it any longer, is that in watching this dynamic between Sierra and what's going on with the Sierra and Amanda of it all on Summer House, it got me reflecting on that relationship and how devoted Sierra has been to Amanda. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kat, historically, right?
So
Always
devoted.
so devoted, always her champion, always in her corner, always cheering her on. And I'm like, where have I seen this before? Oh, yes, I just saw it in Beverly Hills with Sutton. Oh, yeah, we saw it with Benita on Southern Charm. Oh, yeah, we saw it with Ebony K. Williams on Real Housewives of New York. And
Yeah.
what we can agree on, because you and I have talked about this before, is that there seems to be a trend with Black women on these franchises giving undeniable, unapologetic support of their white characters or their white friends or white allies on the show without necessarily benefiting from the reciprocity of having that same emotional support yielded back to them. In fact, what we see sometimes, I think, is when they require emotional support or their voices are elevated to ask for that support or to negotiate that support, they're often villainized. And only two words came to mind, And brace yourselves. It's the power of the magical Negro. And some people are like, oh my gosh, what is that? Well, let me tell you what it is. It's a term that goes back historically. And Dr. Wendy, I'm so excited for you to bring this to us, but it's this dynamic that occurs where Black women are positioned in a way that they're continuing off working in service of their white counterpart, right? At the expense of themselves, positioned as being the wise old owl who has everything to say and all the good things to say, and almost kind of being captain savior to this white woman. And we're seeing that play out in real time on Summer House and other franchises, if you really think about it. And Dr. Wendy, one of the things that came to mind to me as I was preparing for this show, as we were preparing for this show, was that this country, which is built on racism, undeniably so, um, the after effects of slavery and oppression is kind of built into our sociological and our psychological DNA as Black women and as white women. And the way I've seen it, and I want you to like bring us home on this one, but what does that mean and what does that look like? Well, as we know, for white women, as they see us in our relationships with them, historically speaking, we've always been second. We've always been subservient. We've always been in service, and we were often perceived as not even being human. So the default clicks in when we're demanding for our needs to be met. That default is like, I don't see you right now. You got to meet my needs. And our default as Black women is like, oh no, you're going to hear me. You have to hear my voice. My voice is important. My voice matters. And yet somehow, some way, it seems like we kind of fall into that role of working in service to them, their emotions, and all of the things, while our needs are often invisible. Can you tell us more about, that concept and how what it looks like clinically, what it looks like in life, and how it's showing up in the media?
So that concept of the magical Negro, and that started back, with Spike Lee and all of his, franchise and things of that nature, is that when you have that concept of always Black women, Black people, but really Black women always constantly saving the world, giving space to be able to say, I give you grace and permission to go ahead and be who you are, even though it impacts other people. And I'm going to remove the responsibility that you have to be accountable for your words and your actions and things of that nature. Right. And so when you get that person, it gives them a sense of, okay, I can be able to say all these things. Wendy is going to go ahead and give me grace and teach me on how to navigate and be better, but still be seen as
Mhm.
I am just being honest and just being a victim. And I just don't know, but you really do know. And so we give them that space to be able to say, it's okay to be disrespectful, rude, to have microaggressions and things of that nature. And so if we can really begin to look at that and no longer give space to that, then it will prevent what? You talked about how does that impact a person mentally? Well, huge depression, anxiety, PTSD, racial trauma, things of that nature. Because when you have to hold someone else's issues so that you can give them space to be able to say disrespectful things to other people, guess what happens? You still have to go home with that. You still have to be able to say, okay, I still have to do this for somebody else. And then at the same time, I have to be quiet. And that's not fair, right? That's not fair to anyone. And I think that we need to be able to really look at mentally how this impacts us, not only emotionally, but also in our home set and even at our on our stages and things of that nature.
Dr. Wendy, I'm so glad that you brought that up because when you said trauma, the thing is that when I see these characters suffering, such as Garcelle, and I want to definitely get into the Garcelle Real Housewives of Beverly Hills dynamic of it all, I was experiencing trauma. Like my own trauma was like, there was definitely a ripple effect with that. And I don't know if there's a deep appreciation for how much we sacrifice when we show up in a room just to be in that room, whether it's the boardroom, whether it's being a CEO, or and in this case, whether it's being on reality TV. And I think one of the biggest, the most prime examples of this, I would love to get your take on it, is that, For example, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. If you Google magical Negro, mammy trope, and all of that, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and Garcelle and Sutton is like the primary thing that comes up. It's a primary example. And so, Garcelle Bouvois was the first Black housewife on the show in more than 10 years, despite the fact that there's a litany of women of color, Black women in this town who could have definitely been on that show at any time. That fact alone is just really kind of this editorial statement about who Bravo considered to be the face of Beverly Hills. But anyways, she comes on the show. She has to carry the burden of being the first Black woman on the show. So she already has to walk through a fine line. She immediately attaches herself to this white character named Sutton Strack at the time, who is from the South. And this character, Sutton, was not comfortable in her own skin on this show. And because of that, she would repeatedly make these not only just rookie mistakes, but just mistakes and find herself isolated on Sutton Island, if you will, in conflict with the other group. And who was there to save her? Garcelle consistently stepped in and defended her, validated her, at the risk of her also being isolated with that group. And she showed up for her and stood up for her at the expense of herself. And I call it, she drove Miss Daisy until the wheels fell off, till she couldn't drive Miss Daisy anymore. And so when she walked off the screen, when she walked off during the reunion and said, "I'm done," and people were like, "I don't know why she did that. I don't understand." It was very clear. She saw that her feelings, her experience, all of that was not being heard or validated. And most important, this white friend of hers that she rode for like, out of how many seasons, Kat, was Garth?
Oh my God, was it 6?
Like 6, right?
Something like 5 or 6. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was a while.
Was nowhere to be found to catch her. And in fact, in this current season that just ended, they were still talking about Garcelle's walk off, like, we don't know what happened.
They
We
were.
don't know. And still invalidating her. And she's not even on the screen anymore. I mean, seriously, how did that resonate with you, Kimberly, when you saw that?
It was unreal because it's like they didn't. It's like they're completely trying to sweep the racism under the rug. I call it. It is what it is. In Garcelle, it's like you said, she was just riding so hard for her for so long, and then it's like, for what? It's just to be just. I mean, just kind of like tossed to the side, like like you don't matter. And what bothers me is the fact that they're just so like, well, we don't know what's wrong. We don't know what happened. Yeah, you do. You know exactly what happened. And it's stop acting like it has nothing to do with race, because it is. It's everything about race. And they have added Garcelle onto the cast. She was there for a while, but like you said, when she's sitting at the table and when she could have got some people, like other women, defend her, they weren't doing it. And Sutton, she was crying and needed the help. And then here came Garcelle in for the rescue. She rescues her and she's her friend. And then the next thing you know, it's like, as soon as Sutton gets placed where she wants to be with the other women, it's like, okay, I don't need you anymore. Because I've experienced that plenty of times myself. And so I just didn't blame Garcelle for walking off, but then I saw how much of an impact she made on them, because they can't stop talking about her and her walking off, just like you
They
said.
literally can't stop talking about
That's a
it.
good
At
point.
all. At all, at all.
Even Andy Cohen is making her the topic of conversation, and he's the executive producer, you know?
Right. And it's like that was the moment that she chose herself. And here's the thing, and I know, Dr. Talley, you'd probably feel me on this. When you too, Kimberly, all of us, really, women of color, when we are in spaces where we're the only one, especially when we're in spaces amongst white women who don't really understand our experience, they love us until they don't. If you show up and you've got all the resources, you've got all the external markers of being able to be qualified to be in that group, much like what Garcelle said at that table, she has all the external markers of being in that group. But her interior life was never really validated, right? So sometimes they love us because we fit in externally, but never really dive deep to understand who we are as a person until something happens and is triggered in that group that we have to respond to. And now they don't love us anymore because now we're using our voice. And so, I mean, what do you guys think what Garcelle's life would have looked like if the show would have really put some investment in understanding who she was and what her interior life really, 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 really looked like, aside from the little bits that they gave us, like what was it really like for her to be on that show as the first Black woman and having to deal with all of the things and having to deal with bias from Dorit? How do you think that show would have changed if they really focused on that?
You know, let me go back a little bit, and then the question can be asked because there's a huge point here. This woman got fed up.
Hmm.
And she got to the point where she couldn't take it no more. The walk off wasn't like, oh, I'm upset. She got to the point where she can no longer feel like she can hold the concept of I'm going to cater to your fragile need. And for her to be still the concept, still the talk, that means she still gave it value. She gave the show value. And so
Mm.
now we're going to demonize, we're going to devalue, we're going to make her experience insignificant in order for the ratings to continue. I'm going to bring you on to use you, but I'm also going to use your trauma as a way for us to all benefit.
Hmm.
How traumatizing, how disrespectful that this woman now has to constantly keep seeing that. And so we need to really understand that space, that any woman that comes into a space where they are being utilized for the benefit of somebody else, there's going to be lasting traumatic effects to that. And so we need to be able to, hold space. Women overall need to hold space for each other. And for someone to come to their rescue, it should be genuine, not with a secondary need or gain at the end of it. So I just want to make sure I had that point before you all answer that question, because her walk off was so real. And that's something that we really need to just really think about.
So
Yeah.
true.
When she walked off, I felt like we all walked off.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
She said,
You
"I
know?
can't take it anymore." None of us could. We were
And
like,
I
"You know what?
felt that.
Just
Mhm.
go." Like, that's how
Yeah,
I
I mean,
felt.
I think all of us in real life in our day-to-day lives have had that walk-off moment, whether it was like, you know, so transparent and actually walking off or whether it was just a mental checkout like we're done. We've all had, I know I have, especially in spaces where I've been the only one. And when my expiration date of just showing up and having all the things had expired, I had to really get real. Oh, then all of a sudden I wasn't interesting to me. Or you're too loud, you're too this, you're angry. And that is a real thing, guys. Like no matter how you cut it, it is an absolute real thing. And I know, Kimberly, we've had some conversations up until this point
Mhm.
talking about your experience living in the South and what that has been like
Right.
for you.
Oh, most definitely. Sure have. And of course, oh my gosh, living in the South, I definitely see a difference though between when I lived in San Diego and lived on the West Coast than when living in Louisiana, between the way I was treated by white girlfriends. I just see a huge difference because I felt like I was more seen. And I wasn't seen as like a background character with my girlfriends in San Diego. And actually a lot of them would ask me really about how I felt about certain things. And they wanted to know what life was like for me in those same situations when it came to black women and white women. And I told them it was very different because they allowed me to express myself. If I was uncomfortable with something, if I wanted to bring up something that was related to race, they let me talk about it and they wanted to hear. And they would be like, thank you for sharing that. And they would tell me how they wanted to find ways to improve or understand. And here I found even friends from like 20 years ago, it's like the minute I stand up and I say something, it's pretty much like, shut up. I've lost friends recently, like with their past, like we were friends for like over 20 years. And it's because it's basically that's what they were telling me. Oh, hush. Oh, you hush. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to hush. Like I have a right to say how I feel. Like don't sit there and like I had to curate myself for so many years, it's and that's what I see with like Garcelle. I think she had enough and was just like, enough is enough, and she had to leave. So when that scene happened, and just even watching everything that she went through, it resonated.
There's a difference, and I'm just going to say it because it's just that kind of day to day. I think that there seems to be a very obvious difference culturally on how Black women receive and perceive friendships and alliances versus white women. And at times, it does seem like the fundamental difference is that we, as Black women or women of color, fall into these relationships, manage these relationships, and nurture these relationships from the heart, right? Most times, right? I mean, that's just
Mhm.
that's just our cultural thing. That's what we do. But it seems in some cases the white women may, in fact, be extremely strategic at times of how how they experience friendships. Almost transactional. And I'm saying that to say, because when I'm thinking about the Garcelle Sutton connection, it was very painfully clear that Sutton's end game was to be in the in crowd with Kyle and Erica. She wanted in that in crowd, and when she got there on that reunion couch and let her black friend from Haiti, suffer and get called out the way she was getting called out, and she did not lift one southern finger that she likes to do to save her, didn't lift one finger and let her suffer. Garcelle was already calculating in her head, because that's what we do. Oh, okay, I see the writing on the wall. She's not trying to have my back like I've had her back all this time. Next season, probably same thing's happening. I'm out. I don't see any.
Yeah.
I'm done. It's a wrap. Let's go. And hasn't talked to her since. And I felt that. I've experienced that. I think you've experienced it. I know you've experienced it. And that is a real feeling. I think the fundamental difference is between both cultures is the level of strategy and transaction that's often experienced in relationships as it comes to us, and how we just kind of go into it with the heart because that's what we do.
Unfortunately, sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's almost like what we were talking about the other day. You said it today, that it's inhumane. And I've seen that treatment where people are othered and treated like they're just inhumane.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. It reminds me of Ebony Williams. Okay, let's move coast. Let's go to your town side
Yes.
of Cat, New York, right?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Why did it take 13 years to find one black character on the show out of all? Maybe she's the only one that lives in New York. Is she the only one? Because
that is strange because isn't it something like 70% of people that live in New York or something even more than that? So that is very strange to me. But it's stranger that when she came on the show, it's as though the producers forced her to educate every white woman that was on the show, and they didn't know what was going on. So they looked at her as like, why are you trying to school us? Like, who do you think you are? And she was basically like, well, I'm trying to school you. Who do you think you are? Like, to not receive this. So I don't think they set them up for success. Bravo. Or the executives.
That's a really, really good question. That point that you're bringing up, and it made me think, Dr. Talley, to what extent does production invite these black women on these shows? You know, they spray and pray them, right? They spray and pray them, or they segregate them. They never have like really like a true ensemble, like say like a Miami, where there's a true mixture of and a nice balancing of black characters, Cuban characters, what have you. Even Summer House has a lovely balance of how they balance the racial diversity on that cast. But I got to wondering, okay, especially when you were what you were sharing, Kimberly, to what extent does maybe production invite black characters on that show to further promulgate this notion of white superiority to some extent, to kind of stir that racial pot? It just makes me wonder.
And to me, like with Ebony, it's like number one, the one thing I do want to point out that I'm glad you brought up. I can't believe it took that many seasons for them to bring in a black cast member. They put her in there, I felt like, to educate, but then it almost seemed like they didn't know what they were doing. I think they should have maybe educated the cast members beforehand. I don't know if they have black representation, but it seems like to me they must have lacked that big time, because I think that could have made a huge difference. And
I want to stay where Kimberly, and hopefully you can shed some light onto this. You know, before
Yeah.
becoming a therapist in entertainment and things of that nature, I used to do some side acting with Sony Pictures. And what I had learned in the process is that until the ratings determine who's watching and who can move the needle, then they will do that. This is a business. So I'm wondering, it's not that they couldn't find anyone, because you can find us. We're everywhere. But
It's true.
what it is that did it have anything to do with the ratings? Did it had to do with anything people calling in? And I will say this, and folks may have some issues with it, but some folks would understand. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. So even though we may have staff in the background that look like me and you, that does not necessarily mean they're there for me and you. They will probably do it based off of, I got to keep my job. I got to follow the status quo. I got to make sure that I am following the line. But at the same time, not really thinking of that, but want to, but really can't, or just don't even put themselves. So as long as they are proximity to whiteness and they think that they're getting the okay, then I don't want to have to deal with anyone else. And so not all skin folk is kinfolk. So I'm wondering whether you guys can answer, is that could it been the ratings that made the determination of the reason why finally they brought somebody on? Because we're not always the first to be thought of. We're the last or to rescue. That's
Yeah.
that magical Negro and mammy concept, is that we're there to rescue when we no longer can be who we are in those racial tones. I don't know. Thoughts?
You know what first comes to mind? Is this when it comes to casting for these shows? Housewives as a concept was started to teach us. This is Orange County, per Jenna Keogh, one of the legacy cast members on there, to teach society on how to be wealthy and aspirationally rich. Think like pre-Amanda Francis, think that, they were supposed to teach us and give us a master class on how to be wealthy, how to be successful, how to be rich, right? And yet that inaugural Housewife show wasn't diversified enough to really represent all of society. They had one Latina, Joe De La Rosa, and even that, they villainized her, and that's an entirely different episode that we're going to get into at some point. So based on just that inaugural show alone, I don't think that the audience has a objective relationship with understanding that wealth can also look like Black, Latina, Persian, all of that. I'm in those blogs and I read them, and it's very clear that there is a sentiment
Yeah.
that wealth is white. And so when you read about how the Roni transition and how they did away with they put the old Roni on pause, Real Housewives of New York, and they introduced the newest Roni version, which is extremely diversified. Oh, people immediately had a problem with it. You have someone there's gay on there,
Right.
Jenna Lyons, who's a powerhouse. You have was it 2 Black characters? It was just too diverse. It was so diverse. And I had to think that that's immediately why they didn't like it. And my issue with Ebony and Garcelle is that they did them a terrible disservice. They did Ebony a terrible disservice, putting
Yeah.
her on that show with a very all-white, possibly conservative cast, and putting the burden on her to explain away and educate
Yes.
these women about all things race. Poor thing, when she had that Harlem dinner, remember that Harlem? I mean, she put so much. I would have been happy to go to the Harlem dinner and do all the things and dress up. And they looked at that food like it was, excuse my language, but my mother will put me on this because my daddy came up with it when he would describe one of her dishes called okra and tomatoes. Shit on the shingles. They looked at that stuff. It was like shit on the shingles. Like, oh my God. My heart broke for her. So I think that casting possibly knows what they're doing. They know that the Bravo audience is 45% white, upper to higher middle class, and they want to see people that looks like them, which is why they're very good at strategically putting us over in the Potomac. They put us over in Atlanta. These are the only 2 shows that don't really have a white cat. Well, Married to Medicine did for a minute, and I think Atlanta did with Kim Zolciak. Right. But they're very clear for women that look like me, Kim, and Wendy that we have our own shows.
I don't
Mine was
get
a little
it
different.
either.
But when you have the all-white cast, then there's only one of us. It's the spray and pray casting method. Let's just spray one here, let's spray one here, let's spray one here, and let's see the angry Black woman pop off, which she's going to do eventually. Or let's see the Latina pop off, or let's see. Oh gosh, that's just what I think. And I think it was a terrible disservice to put that burden on her. And then now she's looking like, and then you don't give her any allies. You think Heather Thompson was prepared to be her ally? No, she needed another Black face in there to be an ally.
Mhm.
And to just have one Black cast member, it's not doing New York a service. It's not helping New Jersey that all of the women on New Jersey are
Mm.
Italian for the most part. That doesn't help us feel seen because that's not really what Jersey is like at all, really. The tri state area, which is Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey, it's all really a melting pot of minorities from all different places. It doesn't have to be an all white cast. In my experience,
You
growing
asked
up in
me.
New York when I
Oh, yeah.
was younger, I grew up in the Bronx, in the projects. And then when I was in New Jersey, we also moved to the projects in Bayonne. It's a small town in New Jersey. So, but my lived experience wasn't seeing just all Italian or all white people. There's a lot of Hispanic women, there's a lot of African American women, a lot of women from Jamaica or Persians or Arabic people, but just doesn't always have to be just white.
And representative across different socioeconomic strata. too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that too. Yeah.
right.
It doesn't just represent white equals wealth.
Exactly.
And for me, if you don't mind me chiming in, I would say for my lived experience, and I'll actually relate this to Bravo. There was this. I don't know if any of y'all watched it, but there was a couple seasons of Southern Charm New Orleans, and that's actually the one time where I felt like they actually got it right with the casting because it was a diverse cast, and the sports, especially in New Orleans, it's Creole, it's Black, it's African, it's there's been the way they actually had mixed that the cultures. And what I love is the fact that everybody got each other, and the white cast members were listening to their Black cast members, and the way the interactions. And unfortunately, it got, I don't know what happened. They were supposed to do a season 3, and then COVID hit, and then I don't know what happened. It disappeared, and it actually, to me, I was like, it seemed like a fair representation. And then after that, ever since, it's kind of like, well, what's going on? And then like New York, it's like you said, New York is just, it was just, they threw Ebony in there very late. And then that just kind of like crumbled. And then they tried to revamp it, and it's supposed to come back out again. And then New Jersey, like you said, it's like when I would go visit New Jersey, I didn't see just all Italians. It was,
Exactly.
and like, why not? Like, I've actually saw like more Persian people that I've met out there. So a few Italians and Black people, and so it was more of a melting pot. And I feel like I don't understand what they're. I feel like the shows are just more segregated than anything, and I found that the ones that actually really work, it's like they kind of get rid of them. Like Miami was working well. It's like and then now it's like where's Miami? You know, it's
Kim, you are so right. And I wonder where Miami went because they were representation
Mhm.
of what that area is really like, you
And that's what
know?
I loved. Yeah.
Yes.
And
What
if
I wish we knew.
if people were, into wealth porn, those were ecstatic.
Well,
They were unapologetically wealthy if that's important to you. But you know what, Kimberly, I'm glad that you brought up Southern Charm New Orleans. I actually really enjoyed that show so much.
yeah.
So did
I don't
I.
like wealth porn. I just like watching people live their lives. But
Yeah.
it brings to mind another show and another experience. And Dr. Wendy Talley, I know you and I have talked about this, is Southern Charm and Benita Aspen. Now, I'm so emotional about this. I don't know where to go with it. But you have this show, Southern Charm, that it's set in Charleston, South Carolina, one of the most historically significant cities in terms of American slavery in the antebellum South, unapologetically celebrates that. And they have done that in their own way on the show at different seasons. And that legacy is like literally saturated in every frame of that show. And in walks Benita Aspen. And I want to say she came in season 9. Beautiful, Black, lovely, gorgeous, highly intelligent, astute woman with her own sense of agency. She's got all the credentials. She brands for Lilly Pulitzer. She has a brand with Tucker Nut. She's an influencer. I think she has her own she has her own company. I think it's influencing or styling or something like that. But she's doing things. She's doing things at such a very, very young age. And she comes on the show on the heels of a friend that she had gone to high school with, Naomi. I don't remember Naomi's last name, but Naomi was her friend, and she comes on the show. Naomi Olindo, right. And what was immediately interesting was watching this, and I wanted to see, when is her story going to come out? When is her story going to come out? When is her story going to come out? We never have really seen Vanita have her own narrative and her own story. So she comes on the show, and they loved her on the show until they didn't. And her best friend, her legacy friend, loved her until she didn't. Why? Because Vanita very quickly positioned herself as that friend who's got all the wisdom, all the advice. Let me save you for yourself. And the person that she tried to save, coincidentally, was Craig. Sitting at that dinner table, you remember the scene, sitting at the dinner table, Naomi and Craig were having their thing. Vanita offers one little sage piece of advice. Hey, I think he just wants you to validate his feelings. And what did she get? Not thank you, sis. Not I see you, sis. She got, excuse my language, shut the fuck up. At
Pretty
that
much.
Yep, she did.
That's exactly what she
Did.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what she said. And not one white cast member on that show came to her defense. No one really understands the impact of how things progressed for her behind the scenes on that season and how they came for her during the reunion. Her one friend of color, Leva, didn't support her, all of a sudden was not on Team Vanita's side. And that in itself, post-show, when the show wrapped, sent her into this horrible depression where she was in her apartment holed up for months, crying, and didn't want to come back to the show until one of the producers, I don't think it was Alan Baskin, I think it was somebody else, who came to her and pretty much begged her to come back. And you know why she came back? She said because it was basically her burden to bear to take all the hits basically as the first, so other people who come behind her don't have to do it. Yeah, so she decided to take the hits, and she didn't need to do that for us. She didn't need to do that for us. We were fine. But it made me sad to read that. And I'm going to put the article in the description so you guys can read it. It didn't land well for me. How about you guys? Like, seeing her suffer through not being seen. And even as early as this season, the same person she went to bat for, what did he tell her this season? He basically told her too. And so
Yeah.
Literally.
you mean nothing to me in my world. I literally just sat and watched the reunion of last season, and people were horrible to her, and she was whatever, she was on an apology tour. No one on that couch has ever apologized to how she has been treated.
So I think that, when we think about how media controls images and controls the narrative, a lot of those things behind the scenes are set up that way. But then when you got genuine people coming on camera and they're believed to be themselves, they're going to bring that. And for her to be hurt by that, that was her true, genuine self. So
Right.
whether if it was scripted or not, when media controls those images, they don't merely just describe, this woman, this Black woman, who they prescribe it. And when you prescribe an image, it becomes nailed in. And
Right.
so it removes the image that they would want to be. This is who Black women are, rather than this is who we believe. So this is the prescribed image I want you to, fall into. And so for someone to do something like that to her, and then for her to just continue, here we go again. The magical Negro coming in and saving. Let me take the hits. I'll take it for you. Why should you prescribe to that image? Why should you be prescribed to that belief system? What ultimately are the messages that you believe that you should be able to do that, and that's okay? You don't, like you said, why do I need to have you do that for me? You didn't need to do that for me, for Wendy. You didn't have to do that for the Kimberlys of the world. You needed to be in your own space and say, this is who I am, and this is what I don't like, and this is what I don't appreciate.
And to me, like, whenever that moment happened, I just remembered, I was just like, Oh, Vanita. Oh my God. It was
All
because
good.
she didn't need to do that. And it was because it
No.
really what it was, I saw myself years ago because I was in positions like that where I had to sit there and I had to put myself in the dirt so people can walk on top of me and so I can elevate them. And that's how I felt. And it's like, no, you don't need to go there and go clean up their mess and then so that way you can get shit on. It's no, like keep yourself elevated, like elevate yourself. And it was, oh my gosh, that was hard. That was definitely hard to stomach.
Definitely hard to stomach. And the thing about it is two things. One, it feels to me that our natural predilection as Black women, and I do believe that this probably values is also represented in other cultures, Persian culture as well, Kat, that we are nurturers. We have a lot of wisdom that's passed down to us because we have oral history and it's just kind of ingrained to us to be nurturers and to have wisdom and all those things. And when in real life those attributes are exploited and they're franchised for your elevation, but you don't want to elevate me, then we're depleted. And then this is Vanita is like literally, this Vanita Southern Charm is literally like the classic masterclass in this magical Negro dynamic that happens where she felt she was always positioned to be in service to that entire white cast. And that show was never built to amplify Black wealth or Black talent or Black agency. It was only, it only served the narrative to amplify descendants of the Southern aristocracy. And she never fit into that. I don't care if she did go to high school with them. She's never fit into that. And part of me wondered, was that always her legacy, going to school with with Naomi? Like, is this a consequence of being a Black woman in the South that maybe you kind of get in this pattern of being in service because that's their survival that's been handed down to us that's never really left?
I will say this, it's because you get put in that box, especially if she grew up in, say, for instance, I'm going to guess that she probably grew up going to a private school,
She
probably like
did.
a predominantly white
Yeah.
private school with these people, and they probably placed her in a box from the get-go, and she just had to continue to travel up in that box because that's what it looks like to me, and I've seen other people with the same experience. I feel that that makes sense to me. Like it's pretty much like she just had like a role, a character role. It's like, okay, here I am. I'm the safe space. And so I'm going to be your safe space that's going to uplift you. I'm here with you for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, high school, college. I'm here no matter what. I'm going to be your punching bag, whatever you need. I'm going to be your support system. And then when it flips in, it's her turn to need someone, for someone to have her back. It's like goodbye. Like no, it saddens me, but it's the reality. And I found, like I said, I found that to happen more aggressively in the South than I did when I was living on the West Coast in California.
And can I throw something controversial in that? Because let's just talk about the elephant in the room. That concept is not that's it's not new. It's that slave that gets passed down during the will, and that slave is given to the white woman master mistress and saying, okay, you're going to serve her, right? And in that, in serving her, you're going to be there for me no matter what. You're going to take all the hits for me. You're going to serve me emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. But then when outside people come to discipline you, I'm just going to sit there and just let it happen. But here I've been saving your butt, but you have not saved mine. And I think culturally it has moved to this new, it's not even new, this culture of the strong black woman schema, where it's that expectation of black women are constitutionally resilient, emotionally indestructible. We're strong. We can take anything, right? But we're not deserving of love, care, softness, being fought for. You're not worthy of that. And I think that it continues to evolve. It's the same foundation, but it evolves with different titles. Magical Negro, the mammy, the strong black woman, it's that manifestation on TV that let's bring in a woman of color to save everybody, to make us look like we're inclusive and everything is okay. but we're also going to demonize her and put everything down on her because the world kind of likes the fact that we can beat up on Black women and they're still going to just come back.
This part. The,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the most disheartening things for me to read at seeing this young Black woman kind of evolve and trying to figure it out was how the manner in which she was treated. And we see it with Garcelle, we see it with all of the characters. But for her particularly, it trickled down to this anti-sentiment, anti-support of her, where, oh, she's not right for the show. She's weird. She's creepy. She's I can't remember the words. Anyway, they just weren't feeling her and not really understanding all of those racial dynamics that we just spoke of that are kind of informing how she's showing up, right?
Can I also add, as you're thinking about that, is how Black women vulnerability, is being edited in a way that it's invisible, that's ineligible, to producers, the audience, the editors, it's being edited out. And let's
Absolutely.
edit in this. And so when we talk about that editorial of vision and images, that character, she's being who she is because that's all she knows. But while everyone else is editing out who she is as a person and editing in invisibility and ineligibility. I think that, just kind of the concept that's been brought up of the intergenerational archetype of Black women. I think that what we really need to look at is how we frame, how we control our images, and how psychologically that's very damaging. Because I talked, like I said earlier, it's about that evolution from, how did we break down what the Black woman is in those spaces and generationally, and then moving them and breaking that image down into subservient, being not only servant to white women, but also servant to Black men. And then here we go. You're strong. You can pick it up. This is something that you can be able to withstand because you're not like everybody else. You're inhuman. And so when we dehumanize Black women to be able to be soft and all of those types of things, psychologically, what happens is that the world now believes we are no longer deserving and soft anymore, that we don't need to be taken care of. So when you've got these actors and these producers and this editorial of how are we going to look at this particular image, it's not anything new. It's just a new title, but the foundation, the context of it is still the same. You are still owned by this network by a contract, and I'm going to give you to this white actor to serve them in this space, and you are going to accept what comes out of it because this is what you were hired to do. So I'm going to take the hits for you. I'm going to take the hits, right? And then when I do that, I'm just going to get pushed to the side and you can cry in a corner later. Okay, are you done? And then, okay, can you get back up and can you do it again? You're strong. You got it. It's okay. And so we've got to stop being thrown away and saying our image is something that needs to be cared for.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I literally cannot agree more. And that's really bringing to mind what we're experiencing now with Amanda and Sierra. So the inspiration behind this conversation was really, I know, the cultural reckoning I had watching Amanda and Sierra, and really this is the emphasis is on how Sierra is moving through this betrayal that she experienced with her friend of, let's see how many seasons, 6, 7 seasons or so.
A lot.
Where she has definitely positioned herself as her ride or die. And we are watching this betrayal happen in real time. But before we get to the actual betrayal, we see Sierra being the human that she is, just comforting this woman through this marriage that has gone awry, comforting her, just holding her. At one point, she's holding her face. And I swear to God, it was like the modern version of The Help. You're smart. You remember, you're beautiful. You got this. I will fight for you. And we are already knowing what the betrayal is, which makes it extremely hard to watch. Now, when this first happened, public sentiment was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened to her." Oh, audiences of all nations was really resonating with Sierra until Sierra spoke up. Until she spoke up about the multiple layers of betrayal that has been surfacing since the betrayal, and she's speaking up, and she's loud, and she is unapologetic. Now it's, well, now she's a victim. Now she's playing a victim. I don't know what the big deal is. Why they were only together 6 months. The tide has completely turned in the favor of Amanda,
Yeah.
who is the betrayer, right? So I have to wonder, how do we stop this cycle, and how do we push on Bravo and production to really give our women, all women of color, and I'm not just talking about Black women now, I'm also talking about Peggy on Real Housewives of OC. In fact, every woman of color that's been on OC, and that's a whole different segment that we will get into, has been villainized their first season. Usually it takes 3 seasons to be villainized. They're villainized the first season, they don't last more. How do we transform that? You know, I think we've reached the nodal line. So how do we turn it around? What is the transformation that needs to take place?
Well, that's the thing. I feel like when things like the Amanda betrayal are happening and they're happening right in front of us to Sierra, who we love, isn't it hard to trust? And isn't it like, don't you feel more resentful, or do you feel more resentful? Like, do you think it's creating a culture of, well, we can't trust them?
Tell me more about that.
So when that does happen, right, and we see this in real life, like the Sierra versus Amanda situation, does that then make you feel a certain level of distrust and resentment?
I would say, for example, if you saw your people, anyone from the Persian Valley style, anyone from the Shahs of Sunset integrated into a cast, and you know what, I'm going to use Peggy on Real Housewives of Orange County, and how her culture, her sense of self was not celebrated from the moment she walked on the screen. She was immediately deemed problematic. I'm not Persian, obviously, but I felt that experience, and I wouldn't say that it makes me distrustful, because I'm not necessarily the one with the problem. That's something that they own. But what it does make me feel is more aware
Yeah, that makes sense.
and more empathetic. Like when I saw Peggy, when I've seen Joe Della Rosa, Lizzie, all of those characters, Katie Janela most recently, I felt that. And
Katie
I don't have to
Janela.
share their culture just to understand their pain, because it's very much mimics what we go through.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I think, from my perspective, how do we find solution? How do we make this turn? It's first the movement towards liberating this naming system, overt and covert, that for Black women to really understand, am I being am I being cast in my authentic self, or am I being cast based off of this archetype, right?
Mm.
I think we need to really recognize how we internalize and how we control those different types of images, so that when we walk onto a scene, we know exactly what is expected. Now, of course, you want element of surprise, but then we also got to say, I'm just going to say it. If it doesn't fit your narrative, don't do it. Stop selling out yourself for a check. Stop selling yourself out to be on a screen. There's too many screens like the Good Edit that you can be on and still be able to get the notoriety and things, but you get to control the narrative. And I think we need to look at those images that Black women actresses and Latina actresses are finally controlling the narrative, that this is what I'm choosing to do. And so we have to first make the stance. You, just because you bring something to me doesn't necessarily mean I have to take everything that you feed me. And so that's something that if we are really going to do anything different, that's what we're going to have to do, because we got to stop trying to be part of a narrative and an image that downplays us as people with melon, people with culture and vitality and all of those. I mean, the juiciness that they want to suck from, but then also suck it dry to where it's nothing and then move on. Let's get another person. It's very much like a vampire. I'm going to keep
Like so.
sucking you dry because you bring so much culture to my lack of culture and seasoning. And then I'm going to find the next person then when I'm done with you. And so we got to make sure that we don't have everyone sucked from our veins. And so for me, that's something that I think if we're going to take this first step in a resolution and a turn, is to really decide we're going to control our own image in the spaces that we choose that is safe and that will elevate the message that we're trying to get out.
Literally, bravo. Literally,
That
bravo.
was amazing.
Yes.
That's great.
That journey that you took us on, and also, Kat, your question too. I definitely want to elevate that. Is that what we kind of carry it? I don't necessarily, for example, Kat, think I've walked away with distrust, but I've walked away with deep empathy for Benita and a commitment to really unmask some of these dynamics as we're doing today. Benita and Sierra are really the inspiration behind this episode. I got to be honest with you
That's
that
great.
but also I'm going to take with me and reflect on how this shows up in my real life in spaces that where I have been in those situations where I felt, as you said, when Dr. Talley, my lifeline, my agency, my assets are being like sucked dry with, with nothing to gain, just being sucked away, just being basically appropriated, if you will, which is actually just a different level of cultural appropriation when you think about it, because it's so much about our culture to show up and to support. That's what we've been doing from day one. Even before we got here, back in Africa, we've been doing the same thing. So that is, I would like to push for Bravo and some of these companies to give more programming, like you said, Dr. Talley, to really show us authentic narratives of authentic women going through authentic struggles without their narratives being tainted for the consumption and the pleasure of white audiences who don't really want to see us anyway.
Exactly. And we can all carry Louis Vuitton or Hermes bag and drive a Bentley, and we can have
Come on.
$2,000 bundles and things of that nature because because we have our own sense of wealth and culture. And
Yeah.
it's not so much about the money. The money is great. But when we talk about language and culture, that's what they're feeding off of. But we own that. And we need to own our own wealth for that and take care of that. And we get to choose how it's being seen. Because at the end of the day, we're the blueprint. So you're going to need us anyway.
Kat, closing thoughts. Sorry, Kimberly.
This was a great discussion, and thank you so
Part
much,
two.
Dr. Talley and Kimberly, for being our guests. Thank you, Elle, for inviting me. And yeah, I think we could use more of these conversations.
Let's do that. I think so.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Invaluable. We will be continuing this conversation. I'm so excited. And audience listeners, you know what? No lie. Race is hard to talk about. Some people say, why are you bringing race into it? Well, if this is an American television show, then we all know that race is very endemic to the American experience, and it's going to be talked about just like other dynamics that come up. I want to just say this one closing thought, that when you see things happen to our Black archetypes on these shows, and they come back and they're trying to name their experience and they're bringing the racial component into it, just like Garcelle did at that dinner with Dorit and Lisa. And she was trying to explain how hard it was for her to be in that room. The first comment that the audience will always say is, why are we playing the race card? Well, let me just tell you a little bit about that race card. America dealt that game first. So when you play that game to us, then we're going to deal back those cards. And our way at The Good Edit is dealing those cards back by having objective commentary about what is really happening on screens and this racial reckoning and this cultural reckoning that's happening, that we watch every week, and that it filters into our daily life. And with that, you know where to find us at thegoodeditunfiltered.com. And don't forget to check out This Is Kimberly A. Bryant. And please, please, please do check out Dr. Wendy's anthology, Triumph in the Trenches. This is just one of many books that she has. I'm going to put her bio in the notes, but you got to check. Dr. Wendy, you know how I feel about you. Oh, she's my soror too. So just want to nod Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, established on November 12, 1922 at Butler University. This is the greatness that Sigma Gamma Rho consistently produces. And we love our D9 sisters too. And with that, see you later, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.